One of the joys of being able to do the videos the way I'm doing them right now is I can be anywhere and I can film these. And to give you an example, I'm actually in my bed. I just woke up, time to charge my phone, but I decided I was going to record this first so that I could get it out, done with over the day. Anyway, on my way to on the ferry, I discovered that my glasses had a weird thing on them, and I honestly have no idea how long it had lasted, but it was there. And yeah, and I discovered Chief Yakima. I don't actually know if that's actually Yakima himself, but it's close enough. So, interesting information. Walla Walla, Washington is in the county of Walla Walla. So, if you're truly addressing it, it's Walla Walla, Walla Walla, Wa, because Washington is WA. So, yeah. It could also be Chief Spokane, now that I think about it. But I don't think either of them were alive during a photograph time like this. Anyway, I got out and I decided I was going to take the tourist area because I had discovered an elevator. And this elevator was really, really useful because it took me directly over to Pike Street Market, which meant that I could save a bunch of hill climbing. But I was like, you know what? I want to go see the old curiosity shop anyway. By the way, the YE, if you understand Middle English, that actually is pronounced the. The Y is actually a different letter. It's called a thorn, and it gives a basic th sound. Yay! Anyway, it was a beautiful day, really. I mean, Seattle in the summer is quite gorgeous, and brings in a lot of tourists, and we don't tell them about the rest of the year. But I decided to just go in, check out some stuff, and here's a one-armed bandit. Isn't that cool? And I went in and I found a couple of things. This is some old school arcade games. Yes, this is an arcade game. This is what an arcade would have, something like this. And I just took some quick pictures. I really need to take care of my backlog here. But yeah, the old curiosity shop, little rattlers, they're magnets. But because of their shape, they rattle when they are close together. But yeah, I spent a little time there, and I thought it was really cool, so I made sure to go in. Now here's the thing. This is a picture of the area around the arcade. Does it look like there's an arcade? Can you see any evidence? I'm looking through the gift shop, food, beverages, food court, viewings. Alaskan. No, I can't actually find any words that say arcade in there that I can tell. I mean, maybe we could look at it a little closer. Food court. Yeah, no. There is nothing here. There was no evidence whatsoever that there was an arcade, and yet I knew, looking in, that there was one. And in fact, I decided to explore it on Wednesday or Thursday, because that was such a strong impression. I was like, you know what, I gotta test this. I gotta test this out. And this is what I'm calling this little poop here. If you look very carefully, they've actually got these new add-ons to these whatever they are. And they are to keep off pigeons. And I was like, oh, new addition. And this is the underground metro system. And this is, the food court. And I had to go around and around and around to find the restroom. So I decided to take a picture of that. And there's a Daiso, which means big place, or big shop. And they had a bunch of Japanese stuff and candy. And I told my cousin, oh, you'd love it here. Travel like a local. Like locals take any of these. Sorry. I'm probably the only local that uses the whatever it is, the monorail, just because it saves me time and I'm on my way to a pretty touristy area anyway. So yeah, we got there and everything was being set up. I checked out various things. If you look very carefully, or you don't have to look very carefully, it's Captain Power! Captain Power! Oh my gosh, that was my favorite show when I was 5. I mean, absolute favorite show. Loved that show. It was up there with Sherlock Holmes in Time and Space, which doesn't make any sense to you unless you and you're like, what, there was a show called Sherlock Holmes in Time and Space? No, it was called Doctor Who, but I couldn't speak English, so I didn't know that. So Captain Power and Sherlock Holmes in Time and Space were my favorite shows as a kid. This is just opening day, just check out those crowds. And I thought this was hilarious. This is the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. I nearly called it Seattle. Portland World Championship 2016. I don't know how they have a cartridge from that for the Seattle Retro Gaming Expo, but that's a pretty rare thing to have because it is specifically only for the tournaments, and yeah, it's just part of the collection. I doubt they even realize how rare that game is, or even know why they have it. Anyway, that's pretty much what the area looks like. The video game area. Well, not the video game area. The retrocade or whatever. And I was gonna help set up all the arcade games, but they were really fast and efficient, so I just let them do their job. I was gonna bring some better hand trucks for them, but they were like, "No, we don't need them. We don't need them," and I didn't bring them, so it's okay. But yeah, take a look at these crowds. I was asked to take some pictures of John Hancock because a buddy of mine wanted to know more or wanted to see what the video was like, and this is just basic crowds. It was a it was a nice sized group, and I made sure to play some of the games. The indie games were pretty fun. The Tungsten Sun. Honestly, I think the Tungsten Sun it was kind of slow, and there wasn't a lot to do except hunt other mechs, and unfortunately those mechs were kind of boring looking, so it's still a work in progress, but that's why he had it there. He wrote down any notes that I had and any comments I had. He was like, okay, I need to work on this, need to work on this. This is obviously a work in progress. So, I'm not going to judge it by, a finished product. I'm going to say, no, it's still in work. And this was a fun little RPG where you play an accountant who has to take on a dragon who doesn't want to be a dragon anymore, or more precisely, the villain anymore. And it's got a lot of fun little wordplay, but the graphics are still being worked on, and some of the animations and stuff need stuff on it. But it was there we are. He actually moved the screen so it showed up better on my camera. But check that out, He had a lot of fun making it, so I made sure to take a picture, and this is going to come out eventually. This is the indie game area, but whatever. And yeah, that's a crowded day when it's full, and that's the indie area. And this is Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a really cool setup because you're looking at a 4-player cab, but it's got 2 cabinets connected to each other, and I mean they're actually connected to each other. It's the same cabinet, and it's a really really cool setup. I didn't think to get a better picture of it, but this is it. And they had some really nice games for the retrocade. I mean, not a lot, but some really nice ones. And this all came from the same basement area. So, you know, there we go. And the retro or the free play area was doing pretty well. There's a game of Power Stone going on right there, and Power Stone really is one of my favorite games with the Dreamcast. You know how there's games that just kind of sell you on a console? Power Stone is what sold me on the Dreamcast, so I had to make sure to get it, even though there was an audio glitch in the one I got. Uh, Speaking of which, one of the games I got from this show was uh, the game that sold me on the 360, and right now it doesn't work, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on there. But this is a top-down type shooter game. It's very much so Robotron Deathmatch. And one of the cool add-ons is your bullets bounce off everything. So you're trying not only to stop or, to shoot, but you're trying to not get hit by any of the spray, from the bouncing and stuff. It's a pretty fun game. You need 4 players to enjoy it. I hope there's goals and stuff if you want to try a single player game. Enemies and ways to maneuver and things to collect. So it's more like Robotron meets Pac-Man type game. But it's a fun little game. And I hope I got there we go, Chroma Core. And you know what? Another one of those work in progress type games. But if I were you, I would totally play it. If it comes out for like $3, that's perfect. If they add on more, $5-10 is, reasonable. So that's a fun little game. So check it out when you can. And the guy who wears, yeah, the guy in the suit is pretty famous because he has a lot of suits like this. So but Final Fight was a really good addition of that. I was really impressed by that, and every single game was, was working really well and doing really well for what it was. So you should be kind of impressed, just, yeah, it doesn't look like there's a ton of crowds. That was something we decided to work on Sunday, but there were a lot of people, and people were enjoying themselves. There were tons and tons and tons of games. I probably spent more than I should have. And I played Mario Brothers for the Commodore 64, and let me tell you, that game is really hard because the controls just absolutely suck. I was quite bad at it. And this was for my cousin. She really likes Zelda, and I was like, yeah, $5, okay. I try to get stuff for my family when I'm on these trips, so this was for my cousin. And this was the volunteer lounge. It doesn't look like much, and it isn't, but that's okay, And yeah, I just walked around, making sure that all the vendors were okay, having conversations with them. They looked a little bored. I'd be like, "Hey, why don't you just go walk the floor? I'll run your shop for you." And yeah, exactly what it looks like. Oh wow, check out the guy with the arms. I don't know why, but that's just kind of weird looking. So the pizza arrived around 4 o'clock, and we all decided to take a picture of it. Uh, the guy looking away is supposed to be Judas Iscariot, and later on he actually ended up with a little carrier with games in it, bunch of Master System games, and I couldn't afford a single one. But that's okay, because I don't own a Master System yet. Actually, I'm thinking that I might skip the Master System and just let my buddy Adam collect. And if I ever want to play one of those games, I'll just go to his place. That sounds kind of mean, but yeah, it's not. The entire point of Adam having all these games is so that is so that he and his friends can play them. And so, it's an excuse to go see Adam, basically. And yeah, we had a lot of pizza. Oh my gosh, I think I ate one whole pizza myself because I hadn't eaten yet that day. Or I hadn't eaten much that day. And people were just enjoying themselves. It was actually a lot of fun. And yes, that's a crossplay cosplay. He's actually got the nice costume. He put in a lot of work into it. So, that was the only cosplayer I saw besides the orange guy. But, It was pretty good. Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I looked at this and I was like, oh, that looks traditional Navajo. And I made that comment to the woman, and she's like, it is. I learned how to Navajo weave, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've seen a Navajo blanket since I lived on the Navajo reservation. And I was like, oh, there's congratulations, you're a woman now. In the Navajo reservation, you to achieve womanhood, you have to know how to weave, and very few men actually learn how to weave. I know how to weave, but I still need to work at it. And she's actually got these little patterns for what she needs to do in every single area, and I was just like, oh, little old Navajo woman would love that. They've got it memorized. They can finish a full-sized blanket in a week easily, and they just churn them out. And this is kind of the center of the Navajo house. Not the center in the way that you think of it. It is in the place of prominence, and you will always see that when you enter the door. That is the the thing that you will notice first. And this is supposed to be the woman's area. The women are in charge in the Navajo reservation. So if you ever hear about patriarchy, they are totally a matriarchy, and at times it sucks. It totally does, but you know, I could go on and on and on about the Navajo culture because I lived there for for a couple of years, and I love it. Oh my gosh, look, they have the combs. Oh, sorry. I mean, I need to make my own loom soon. I've been meaning to do this, but I've been living in other people's houses for so long that I just don't have the room yet anymore. And after about 4 o'clock, things started to close down, and I took pictures of people playing games. Kangaroo, by the way, is kind of a weird game, really. And the cloth covers went on, and people just started to hang out and talk to each other. There's John, Jenna. Actually, those are just a bunch of vendors, and they just started chatting with each other. And that's the cool part is the show ended, but we were all still there, so we just all hung out and played some video games. Played some video games. And yeah, it was a good time for all. And then we had the arcade Armageddon competition. Here's a shot.
Oh, that could work. Ooh, good shot. Good shot, my pod. Oh, there's.
And there were still some vendors open, so I walked around and I took pictures of vendors. And here's another shard.
So we'll go ahead and reset. Yeah, or that too. We'll find a way.
Yeah, this is the full Navajo setup. They hadn't closed down for the day, but or I think they did. Now that I look at it, the blanket isn't there. The blankets aren't there. But yeah, it's a geek Navajo blanket. The only reason why I didn't buy one is it was $50, and I was like, I don't have $50. Dang it! I so want one. And balls of string, Navajo loom pixel arts, and other fiber arts. Look them up. Like them. Buy their freaking blankets. Oh my gosh. This anthropologist is just overwhelmed by how awesome that is. And this is the award ceremony for.
The Star Fox Super Weekend? Yes. That is the legitimate Star Fox competition game. Yeah. She can be.
And yeah, this is the award ceremony. It took a lot longer, and this is where the rest of all not the vendors, but the crowds, the attendees were, I don't know the right term, the visitors, the people who paid to get in were. And
Third place will receive $50 each. Going to Ben Amdahl and Vivian Lynn. Congratulations. Asking for change? What?
Yeah, and the big winner, let's see if we get it.
And the title of Arcade Armageddon champion, Bob. We're calling him Bob because he didn't want. Actually, no, we're not recording. Jonathan. Jonathan is our winner.
And you'll notice that he looks kind of familiar from some of the volunteer areas, and he was. So yeah, he totally won the entire competition. He was so embarrassed. He was like, I wasn't supposed to even be on the thing. They just needed a spare guy, and I won the whole thing. Ah! And this was from my walk back from the bathroom. I had to take some pictures because look how insane it looks. And I just, yeah, oh, I walked through Pike Street Market. I walked around, took pictures of the area. And, Pike Street Market is very beautiful. And then I realized that the ferry had already left. So I went to GameWorks. And it is got a bar and stuff. It looks very nice. But the thing about GameWorks is they just got board games. And I hadn't been back in a while. So I thought I'd check it out, take some pictures. Oh man, that's a blurry shot. There we are. And it was hard to get some of the shots because you actually I had to hold my camera a little bit longer because of the exposure. But I think they all came out pretty well. I wasn't able to play any games. I was just walking around taking pictures, as many as I could. And GameWorks is considered one of the major arcades. It came out in the 90s, back in the day. And I really enjoyed it, even as a kid. Though it wasn't my favorite arcade. My favorite was actually at the Seattle Square. Um, but GameWorks was kind of the high end arcade. All the cool stuff would be there, and they still have an arcade there, and it still has all the high end stuff in there, and just tons and tons and tons of games. I hadn't really been in here for a couple years, really, and if I were to be honest, it almost feels like you're in a spaceship when you're looking through it. It doesn't feel like you are at an arcade. It feels like somebody snuck in a spaceship and made all the controls look like arcade games, and that's what it actually feels like. You walk in and you're like, oh, I wonder how I can get me to, Gamatron 64. And there was a ton and a ton of stuff to play. And they have kind of the industrial feel to it on the top. And, oh, check out those. I love the sit down. They're called candy cabs in the US, but they're not actually candy cabs. I think those are Astros, but they're basic cabinets and you can put anything you want into them. And they had all sorts of games and little benches and stuff. And I don't even know what this is for. I don't really know why they need a network system there. But they had tons and tons of games. Hi, Ian. And I took as many pictures as that was my fault. Sorry. And I took as many pictures as I could, so then you could see what was there. And they have, Terminator is over 10 years old. That's weird to think about, but it is. And they had a ton of games to go play. Oh, I think it's somewhere around 100 to 200 games. I could be wrong. But, just this classic feel, like old 90s feel to it. And, the games are still there. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Oh, man, I remember that one. Very, very, very fond of that. And I just took some RC shots because I knew later on I was going to put them to Instagram or something. And really, I need to make a book called Arcades I've Been In, and just go around the Northwest and take pictures of all the arcades, and then just make the book and throw it out or put it out there. And look, they have a classic Star Wars trilogy right next to a modern racing game, and they just had a lot, and the atmosphere is a lot of fun. But here's the addition: they had computers, and this kind of took up an area. And in a lot of GameWorks, they started moving in computers. The reality is GameWorks as a company is no more. It's now independently owned by various groups, and you don't know what you're going to find depending on which GameWorks you go into. So some of them have started having computers in them, and they're like, "Oh, this is going to make us more money," and I have no idea. I do know that at the arcade I used to work at back in Hawaii, they used to be an arcade, but you know they moved in consoles thinking it was going to save them money, but instead it didn't bring in as many people, and so because of that, yeah, it was cheaper to have the console, but the console wasn't making as much money as the arcade, so we it was a definite problem. And this is a thing that everybody kind of doesn't understand is yes, the console is winning, but it's not making as much money. It's not attracting as many people. It's not bringing in as many customers. So it isn't going to do as well. Oh man, check out that Rambo. Do you realize there was a version released for the PS3? This game is over 10 years old. Kind of weird to think about. I mean, it's very obvious that they bought their own games, that they maintain their own games. There's actually an area specifically for people to maintain the games. And I made sure to cover as much as I could so that people could just understand the angles. Oh, this is a terrible shot. Oh, that's right. I was using a close up of it, and it's a darkened area. But yeah, this is pretty much GameWorks. And GameWorks, classic games. Here's a pan shot. Did you know that GameWorks was started by Steven Spielberg and other major film guys? And this was during the 90s when they were at their absolute height. DreamWorks was actually the other company that they started, and it was started by the same folks. And they were like, "Oh man, we need to get into the video game scene because this is where the big thing is." And so, for the longest time, this was actually owned by Steven Spielberg, and they had the coolest things. That Spielberg actually built his own games for this place, and it's no longer playable. You can't even find it anymore. But it was actually a type of ride. And oh, check out those pods. Yeah, the game on the left costs about $25,000. So yeah, the Spielberg ended up selling it to Sega. So for a long time, it was actually owned by Sega itself, and this was just an extension of the Sega arm. But Sega has ended up selling it, I think, in 2010, I believe, and the company started itself up on its own, and it didn't last very long after that. So they've been independent ever since. Just it's got the name, but it's sort of like a Subway. This is the guy who owns the thing, but he pays money to get the name, and that's how the GameWorks have been used ever since. So I went back to Pike Street Market because that's where the elevator was, and I took some pictures. Unfortunately, I never got a shot of what she was taking a picture of, but I'm sure you can figure it out. And there's Seattle in all of its glory. And I just walked on the way back, and oh, this guy. And yeah, he actually had a bunch of beats. I just never got the shot there. And I had a little bit more time, so I bought myself some ice cream just because I wanted to say I went to this ice cream shop because it had been tempting me for days. And I was like, okay, I got it, finally. And this is the view from the ferry. Honestly, very, very beautiful. That's a mountain. And oh, wow. I actually have a couple shots here that are actually in 4K. And I'm going to post them onto my thing and just be like, here's some 4K shots I took. And then I'm going to immediately erase it from my phone so that I have room. Like I said, I came home on the ferry during sunset every day, and it was gorgeous. So it didn't matter what I did, there was just this absolute beauty to it, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the view. I enjoyed just kind of sitting there and enjoying it. And with the anti-allergent I had, I was able to enjoy it without having an allergic reaction. This is the 4K shot. So if I felt like it, oh, I guess I can't. I sort of want to zoom in. We need some Enya music here, like maybe a single violin. And this is definitely the 4K shot. Just realized I had to sell this. And look, it's the Manette Bridge. And that's where I was the day before, and beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. I didn't know about the wind until just now, so sorry about that. And I walked my way back. And in case you're wondering, this flower was stomped almost immediately after I walked away from it. And just took pictures on the way back to my car. And let me tell you, it was just a gorgeous day. My biggest complaint is that I didn't get to get a picture of the sunset from the bridge from where I stay to Bremerton Ferry. So that is my biggest complaint for the day. So it was a gorgeous day, and you just saw some gorgeous stuff. So I highly recommend it to everyone. So that was the day, and bye now.